My name is Aukse. I am myself revenue and operations automations consultant. And today I am blessed to be joined by Mark Scrumenti, who is fractional CEO, strategic advisor, and system and soul leadership team coach. He will be joining me to discuss this topic from both perspectives, technology and leadership. So thank you, Mark, so much for joining me. We met here on LinkedIn and we had just amazing discussion, which I think lasted around 3 hours on this topic. And we realized we have so much to tell, to share, and you know how these discussions, they help us reach amazing insights. And we thought that you will definitely all benefit, especially when business executives and managers are under so much pressure to try AI. And of course, everyone talks about legal perspective, about ethical one. Let's leave those behind. Let's talk specifically what you should think about as a leader when you really care about your strategy execution and operations. Yes. So, Mark, why do you think we really need to discuss it today? And what both of us have seen in business world that is related to this report?
Yeah, thanks first of all, Aukse, for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here. I love talking to you. We have these sprawling conversations that go in all sorts of directions, and this is a fun one to talk about. I think the reason we're talking about it, you had read the LinkedIn report. It was their first of a quarterly planned series of reports on AI, and we're a year into the AI phenomenon now. The tech really blew up for mainstream users with the launch of ChatGPT about a year ago, or in November of 20. There was, a lot of hype about that, a lot of dazzling stuff. I have to admit, at first, I think I was very excited with it, playing around with ChatGPT and having human-like conversations and so forth, and particularly impressed with Midjourney and some of the generative AI for artwork and what you could do with it. But now that we're almost a year into this and we've had a chance to play around with these tools and assess their practical use and application, I think it's pretty obvious, first of all, that we're still in the very early stages of this technology. I think of it e-commerce circa 1997 or maybe 1996. I still think it holds a ton of promise, and there's some no-brainer applications that everybody should be using, in my opinion. But we have a long way to go still. Besides some useful developments around the margins, it's my point being from an operations standpoint that AI is unlikely to be where your biggest efficiency leverage points are right now for most small businesses. In other words,
Basically agree. I completely agree because a lot of business owners, especially in the current economy, that there are so many questions about the biggest crisis that we are yet to face. So everyone is looking for that biggest efficiency leverage point. And I think that it is not just ready to be your biggest leverage point. So I love numbers. I'm a numbers person. I always throw a lot of statistics. So in my other previous events, I did that. And I really wanted to emphasize three numbers that I found. So 94% of workers say they perform repetitive, time consuming tasks in their role. What does it say to us? Yes. The first thing that would everyone start screaming today is AI, isn't it? We're like, then you need AI.
right.
No, that's the thing with AI. Even the workflow automation tool, which is very easy to implement, can take care of that usually. So you don't
Mhm.
even need AI for that. Another really significant number that was all still shocking me, and I checked it on several sources, is it really true? Track and manage their processes. So that's a scary number, isn't it? Business is like a bunch of processes, isn't it?
And how is AI gonna help you with that?
Yeah,
Current
exactly. If you don't even know the processes that you need to have in the business due to lack of knowledge and education, and you don't even track them and manage them properly, management means someone is actually accountable for that process in business. There are KPIs for that specific processes. There are improvement plans. And of course, the huge leverage point is automation of those processes. So only if 4% of companies are doing that, we don't have a problem with AI. We have problem with actually educating business community about the processes themselves.
Right.
And the final one, just 2% of respondents have all their business processes modeled and documented, suggesting that just a few organizations are ready for automation at scale. So we are not even ready for automation. A lot of clients that come to me, they tell me, they usually just throw some tool names at me and say, which one should I use? And I just want to implement it.
Mhm.
And then we start the conversation. And of course, the project becomes, first of all, do you have business process model? Do you know what specific things you want to achieve with it? Do you have the team collaboration around that process model? And none of these things exist. So everyone seems to be hunting those trends of those fancy tools, but the boring stuff of the business processes, of course, is often forgotten. So I found these statistics in Mordor Intelligence website. I love that website because they're giving away so much free stuff.
Mhm.
Usually you can get these reports only for 10 grand or something that I don't want to spend. If listeners are interested in really understanding the depth of crisis of business processes, just Google. You don't need AI. Just Google. Yes. So
More was
what?
the site?
Yeah, Mordor intelligence. Mordor intelligence sounds scary. I know the
Right.
name itself sounds scary, but the 4% and the 2% about non-tracking and managing their processes, and there's no processes documented. Yeah, maybe it's just me, business process consultant, talking. For me, it's great. For me, it's great because it means I'm in great business. If everyone just don't know how to do that stuff.
Right,
But
right.
what does it specifically mean for all business executives and owners attacked by this illusion of AI as the solution of business skills problems? That's completely different story.
Aukse, is one thing I was thinking regarding business processes. I thought
Yeah.
maybe this is an area where AI can help us because everybody hates documenting business processes. But the problem is with the current state of AI, at least any of the tools that I've explored and that I'm aware of, is that processes are very human and very subjective. If you try and document, this goes back to my days as a technical writer. I started as a technical writer just out of school, and you're trying to figure out how does this process work. And you talk to 7 different people who are all involved in the
Yeah.
process, and they all understand it. And that's where things can get really challenging. And so, to your point, if you want to scale, if you want to automate these things, they have to be standardized. And that would be the first step in automating anything that can be standardized would precede anything that AI can do. AI will spit out a template or sort of a formula for what generic process should look like. If you say, what would be a standard process for, publishing or like a content production process, for example,
Yeah.
it'll give
Those would definitely available. Exactly.
like a generic outline, but it's not actually going to describe the nuances. And that's where processes tend to break down. It's at the margins. And so that's a very human process. And I still can't
Yeah,
see
it
any
is.
way
It's
around.
definitely human. It's definitely human process. Of course, documentation itself, specifically for SOPs, is really helpful. I just recently tried this app, and I also added a video to LinkedIn where it's very easy to create a video SOP just simply by recording your screen actions. So what it does just literally transforms your actions that you are taking at that point in your screen, and that becomes a nice SOP as a video and as a text.
Right.
So I will share that link later. But it's even a free app. So regarding documenting SOPs, there's no excuse nowadays. We have Loom, yes. Even the Loom,
Right.
just this, please, for God's sake, just use free Loom version up to 5 minutes, make SOP 1 minute. That's it. But when we're talking about more complex business processes and the roles and skills involved, I haven't seen any specific tool when it comes to both the automation and also the AI tool that is available yet.
Mhm.
Maybe it's some secret invite only enterprise level, but definitely from my research, I'm really waiting for this because as someone who documents and maps business processes and sales processes, I am using like really manual tools, even Mirrorbot, which is come on, when living in the age of AI, it's not cool at all. And yes, I'm definitely waiting for more elaborate tool that would help with that, and that would be definitely great. But yes, there's no excuse. We have so many documentation and knowledge management specifically tools. Talking about knowledge management, I am collaborating with one great knowledge management software team, and I am expecting to have a really great event specifically about knowledge management. But yes, to your point, we definitely should start getting better with at least SOPs in in all levels of business. Usually small
Right.
business owners are very defensive about it. They don't have time. I completely understand that. But there are tools that is just so quick that there are no excuses.
And you can't
Okay. Yeah.
scale. You cannot scale without standardized processes. This is the problem.
Exactly.
Y
Exactly. You
y
can't scale because if you just hire one, there's usually this one smart guy or girl in the team, and they have everything in their head, and then they get sick
Right,
or they get tired and leave, and everything falls up. And whose fault
right.
is that? Yeah.
The manager, yeah. There's a you have to build in redundancy as well, and this idea of scaling the founder CEO's brain in a small to medium-sized organization, an entrepreneurial organization, where initially the founder CEO does everything. And nothing is documented. And even like it could be 5 years into the business, and this is where businesses typically stall out, where the founder CEO is still doing 14 different roles, and many
Yeah.
of them roles that they shouldn't be involved in. And yet nobody else knows how to do it, maybe, or the founder's reluctant to hand those tasks off because they've always done them, there's risk in that and so forth, and, that's a whole other conversation really, but helping to facilitate that transition is key for many businesses to get over that initial hump where they stagnate, and many of them never grow beyond that for lack of this sort of, transition from founder-led business to senior leadership team-led business, and to disseminating and distributing all the knowledge that's in their head across the organization, standardizing it into repeatable pieces that you can build on for scale.
Yeah, I think that every business owner, they should start in the beginning, but it's never too late. I see business owners who come to me and they have businesses 10 years, 15 years. Just now I'm working with this great businesswoman from the US, and she has built just great business. 10 years, team of 20, field level business, and she's managing everything so great, but nothing is documented. There are not no process documentation. She has hired amazing operations manager, but it's just scary. I'm looking at her, I'm thinking you have built the job places, people get work, you have built this amazing community. I'm reading reviews and like literally I'm looking at them and wow, like she's bringing miracle to other people's lives. And I'm just thinking, what if suddenly, happens something? Like, could her husband help? Could anyone help? Because there's no knowledge base. It's not very complex business, but again, it's just I can't believe I'm even saying that. Yes, every business is complex because there's always some authentic elements that we do every day in our life as business people. Yeah, to wait 10 years for that, it's scary, but again, it's never too late. It's
So
never
you're
too late to protect your business.
so you're talking about risk mitigation,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. It's both risk. For me, it's first risk because what the first
Prote
feeling I get about businesses that don't have processes modeled and documented is fear. That's the
Mhm.
first feeling. It's not about, oh, we can't grow, our revenue is not growing. It's not about, let's call it greed, okay? From Christian perspective. I mean, but for me, the first thing is fear. I don't want you to lose what you already have. That's the first thing, isn't it?
Right,
Then comes scale.
right.
So not so many everyone thinks about, "Oh, it's just for scaling, but we are fine now." No, you need to protect your business. You work
It's 2
so
sides of
hard
the
on
same
it.
coin. Yeah.
Exactly,
Risk
exactly.
mitigation and growth. The things that you do to address both of them can work either way in most cases.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's dive deep into this report. Okay, so we will talk about surprises, disappointments, skills, tools we looked at, we tested, and we had fun of them. So let's start with the biggest surprises in the whole report.
Yeah.
For me, it was, I don't even know why it was a big surprise for me, but somehow it was. It is in 14th page of the report. So anyone who is looking at the report or maybe will look after listening to this recording, there's 14th page, and we found these numbers that 3 in 4 people share that they would be comfortable using AI for administrative tasks. So it's 76%. But most people also said they would be comfortable using it for analytical, 79%, and even creative work. 73%. So, what surprised me wasn't about the trust in creative work because the AR art is quite amazing or even analytical, but AI for administrative tasks. Because the last year conversations I had with business owners and operation managers, not so many of them would have trusted AI for administrative tasks specifically. So that was a
Mhm.
surprise for me what LinkedIn found. Maybe, of course, they have bigger pool than I did, but
It's
that
about
was a
3,000 people, I think.
oh, it's 3,000 people only.
Ye
Okay,
yeah,
well,
it's
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 still
smaller than I thought. There's a methodology at the back of the report, but go on.
oh wow, okay, 3,000 people. So that's really small.
Yeah, I could be
Uh,
wrong about that.
Yeah, I don't think it's very big, but still, in terms of administrative tasks, so the surprise comes from talking to business owners and founders and really like technology company owners that they usually use AI more for analytical work or for sales specific automation, but not for administrative tasks. Maybe for internal administration. So that was the surprise for me. Okay, Mark, what about you? What was your surprise?
Yeah, no huge surprises for me. I did find the chart on page 17 interesting. They have a number of different career categories, and it estimates the percentage and type of tasks that generative AI can assist with, and those that it can't or can't yet. And one of the things that just jumped out on me makes sense in retrospect, but was there's this whole class of jobs requiring skilled physical labor that's not likely to be replaced or even augmented by AI anytime soon. So they mentioned oil drilling, truck driving, construction. And then I realized, oh, yeah, that makes sense because it's one thing to automate an assembly line. But if you've ever seen any of those robot contest videos where these AI controlled robots still aren't very good at fine motor skills, and they can't do certain specialized tasks that skilled humans can do very effectively. So it's good news for tradespeople, and I'm hoping this drives more young people into the trades because we definitely need them. I don't know how things are in Denmark, but here, if you ever try to retain the services of a great handyman,
It's getting expensive
no,
in
well, it's
Denmark.
expensive too. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it
Yeah,
can be
yeah, it's
significant.
very expensive because nobody wants to do that. It's not fancy. This is not, you are not an income
Right. Well,
basically when
yeah,
yeah, it's definitely expensive. But I
I
think it's
suppose.
the
Yeah.
same around the world. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing I think the potential impact on software engineers is profound. That's something that I was aware of. They were saying that like 96% of certain programming skills or tasks can be done by or with the help of AI. And that ironically, the 3% of engineering work that they say requires more advanced people skills, which I think is probably an underestimate, is likely to be assisted by AI. And
Why
I
do you
think
think it's
that
underestimated?
what I'm saying, that they're saying that, I think people skills are far more important than 3%. You know, if I'm reading the chart correctly, it's saying there's about 3% of what software engineers do that requires advanced people skills. I'm like, yeah, maybe for a very low level programmer who doesn't have to talk to the product management team or clients or customers or anybody else or even the analytics department. But I think for the best engineers need to have really good people skills, communication
Yeah, the
skills.
collaboration skills specifically, because
Right.
I
And
think that this
creativity.
number comes from what we are experiencing now. They always talk about this problem in engineering teams, how to make their collaboration better. And then they say, oh, they just don't have people skills and we don't need it. We just need them
Right.
to do the work. And then their projects collapse. And it's
Right.
just because the collaboration skills or simply the management wasn't taking care of all that collaboration that was supposed to happen during that project. So I think that is definitely not 3%. I mean, again,
Right.
if we are talking about serious work, if we are talking about really creative, serious work, serious projects, any work should isn't it?
Right.
So I think they do require advanced people skills because from my perspective, the more complex is your work. And so if you have 10 engineers, if you have 20 engineers on the same project working, that requires more advanced people skills.
For sure. And then communication skills, that would include communication skills, verbal, and that's oral and written skills. And that's as important as ever, which led to another interesting conclusion. They're saying that the rise of AI is driving up demand for people skills and specialized skills. Now, I think the demand for people skills has been there already for a while. But I think what they're really saying, they don't come out and say it, although I think there's at least one quote in there that spells it out pretty clearly, that not only do you need to learn how to work with AI for the tasks that it's likely to augment in your profession, whatever your profession is, but also as AI starts replacing more of the mundane, repetitive, algorithmic tasks you've been doing, it'll free you up to do other things. But if you're not already good at those things, you're going to have to adapt and learn quickly or possibly be late. So the willingness and ability to learn and the need for a growth mindset and training resources are more important than ever. And I think this starts with leadership and culture.
Yeah, definitely. We'll talk about leadership in more detail just in a few minutes.
Mm.
But I definitely love your point about the growth mindset. So for me, growth mindset equals curiosity. And
Right.
this is something that I've been just missing so much in current humanity state. I don't know what about you, but
Mm.
it's just we have like you can say someone can have a growth mindset, but if you dig deeper, it's more of a greed, but not curiosity, how to do things, how to innovate, and just
Mm.
explore interesting growth paths instead of just searching for fast solutions. So everyone is using that word agile. Yes. And
Mhm.
if usually when a company comes to me and or a founder, the big investment coming in comes to me and says, we just want to do everything agile. It simply means
Fast.
99%. Yes, we want fast and I don't want any involvement. I'm not interested.
Right.
So that's what it means from my perspective. Again, I had
That's funny.
3,000 conversations in the last 7 years, and that was just a pattern that I'm seeing. And I think that what we definitely need to think, talking about generally humanity and kids and school and universities, we need somehow to instill that curiosity. Yes. That's
That
the most important thing. Curiosity, not in terms of curiosity, how I can get money fast and become famous fast, but curiosity about how everything works and what I can find and what I can create.
Yeah, and, that seems hard to train, especially with adults, that does seem a lifelong practice that you develop. But all that said, I do think it could be enhanced through conversation and training and learning. But again, you have to want to. And it sounds like what you're saying is that people are
Yeah,
typically motivated by something that's instrumental, that it leads to some kind of advantage for them rather than learning for learning's sake. And I'm not learning for learning's sake sounds empty, frivolous activity. But if I think if you enjoy learning, that is an exercise. That's a muscle that you need to exercise, right? That is a
exactly.
practice and a discipline, and that can be cultivated in an organization. That can be a core value for your company. And how do you activate or operationalize core values? You have to embed them in organizational practices and habits that you cultivate and develop over time that really give these values a chance to come to life. And so learning, and what does that look like? Being able to make mistakes, culture that permits mistakes, that encourages risk taking within certain parameters where you're not going to be chewed out for making a judgment call that turns out to be wrong. if you follow.
Mark, are you talking now system and soul slang?
That's I sure. I'm not trying to pitch any particular framework here. I think it's a good one, but I think this is common practice for, or I shouldn't say this is common practice. It's not common practice enough, I would say, but I think this is how every organization needs to operate. So it's for me, it's this is from an operational standpoint. So it's just as much based on my own experience working with teams and what makes for effective collaboration and how do you build a culture that attracts and retains the best people, which is where most of your leverage is going to be if we're going to talk about leverage in terms of especially for knowledge workers.
So, do you believe that it is possible to actually create a culture of curiosity in the company nowadays?
That's a good question. I do think it's possible, but I think what that would mean, just like with any core values implementation, is that you hire for that as well. So if you're trying to
Yeah.
retrofit curiosity to a team that's bored and not, you know, intrinsically motivated or whatever the issue might be, or not just naturally inclined to be curious and to learn, that's not likely to happen. But I think it would be, let's just say that is your team and you're trying to implement a culture of curiosity. I think it would involve making that a core value. Some people probably wouldn't make the cut anymore. So you'd probably have to let some people go and you'd start hiring for that value and you'd start breeding it. And some people would manage to be able to make the transition. Like it might be there already, but it was never encouraged or cultivated.
Okay. Okay, so when you were answering my question, another question that just raised what's okay. So let's say we start hiring people that are curious mind. There are all
Mhm.
these tests, and of course, their personality can show and tell us a lot. But what about looking at universe? Do you think that there are curiosity killers in the companies nowadays that can just kill that culture and kill that innovation? Have you seen these situations in your practice?
Curiosity killers,
Yeah.
yes. It could be, let's say, an all hands meeting where somebody is called out for a minor mistake that they've already acknowledged and apologized for. Like, they're dressed down publicly. Like, that sort of approach to leadership or management scares everybody, and if people are scared to take risks, they're not gonna learn. Or if you have to stay on script, or if you don't have enough autonomy, all this stuff seems
All all
yeah.
all the culture, all that fear culture that can happen in
Yeah,
corporate
fear
environments.
culture. Fear is not conducive to curiosity. It's
Yeah.
conducive to survival. And people will survive any way they can, even if that means being dishonest in some cases. It's just yeah, that's an awful culture to work in. Nobody wants to work in a
Yeah, that's
fear-filled culture. All
that's
the
for sure.
behaviors yeah, all the behaviors that create that kind of atmosphere are negative, and I think we probably all have experienced them and know what they are. I'm
Yeah,
happy to talk
that's
about that
that's
more,
for
but
sure.
yeah.
That's a really big disappointment. So if we are talking about biggest disappointments, what do you think is some disappointment for you in this report or missing thinking?
Oh, let me see. I think it was anticlimactic, really. So I'm trying to reorient myself here. I think, yeah, it didn't add much insight or explore any of the implications of the statistics being reported. It's subtitled "The Future of Work," and it says it's meant to help every professional and business leader. So I had written down this quote to find something
Yeah.
meaningful to help you navigate these changes in the marketplace, but I actually don't see much of that in the report. It made me wonder if this was an AI generated report by itself. But
For
so
me, it was maybe advice for software engineers that's searching for another work.
or exactly right. It's clear like they did not want to create anxiety, and they focused on the
Yeah.
enthusiasm and the
Mm,
excitement
mm.
and the promise and all of that. Again, I think there's lots of reasons for hope and in terms of what this technology can do to help us. It's just still early, and some of the excitement and sheen has worn off maybe after the first year, at least for people who've played around with these tools a bit and have a more tempered perspective on what you can do with it right now. But I think the report basically gets into like the huge increase in AI related keywords and skills showing up in people's profiles or in job postings like prompt engineer.
About that, about AI related keywords, we forgot about one thing that LinkedIn algorithm really preferred hashtags with AI, and everyone who was posting about AI, like literally got like hundreds, thousands of followers. So
Right,
I
so it's a
think
self-fulfilling.
that's yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah. Which countries and fields AI option is spreading the fastest? And this is the kind of stuff the report gets into. And then it gets into marketing fluff about LinkedIn's pioneering efforts in AI and some of the AI-driven features that they have in the works. For example, enhancements to Sales Navigator that you'll be paying for. Now, to their credit, they do have, I think, a lot of good AI-related tutorials and resources. And there is including a free certification course available through 2025 in AI. They're trying to do something, I think, for people to help them adapt to this transition, and they deserve some credit for that. But that was really my sense of the
Okay,
report.
I see.
Um,
I don't know. I didn't find anything like any super disappointment just about it. I cannot agree more with anticlimactic thing.
yeah,
But a 13th page said that only 47% of executives agree that using generative AI will increase productivity. For me, that is strange, having in mind that AI in terms of business, that's all it's supposed to do, isn't it? Increase productivity. So
right,
for me,
right.
maybe it was some kind of misunderstanding.
Based on what though? I think they don't really know how or when, right? I don't know how they asked the question, but I think a lot of people are like, "No," a knee-jerk reaction, and yeah, so I don't really even know what to make of that statistic. But you were
Yeah,
disappointed,
because
like, you were expecting more. I'm sorry.
I expected
Oh,
more. I expected
yeah.
more. I have to, how many requests I receive per week to 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 work, and this is usually US and Canada business owners that come to me and founders,
Yeah.
and that was just surprising. But
What else?
again, maybe it's not a bad thing. Okay, so the next thing that we wanted to talk is the 12 skills list that caused us two interesting questions, and that's where we found interesting ideas.
Yeah.
So, in the report itself, you will find 500 skills are going to be likely to be affected by generative AI technologies. And these 12 skills are the most frequent ones featured by LinkedIn members: writing, editing, documentation, translation, content creation, financial reporting, email marketing, data analysis, software development tools, programming languages, data science, and time management tools.
Mhm,
So when I was looking at this, I specifically delved into data analysis, financial reporting, documentation, time management tools.
mhm,
And these are the two questions that came to my brain. So, as AI driven data analysis becomes more accurate, and it is becoming more accurate, even now, I have clients who are run AI driven data analysis reports on projects, portfolios management, and
mhm,
it's really accurate. So, I just received feedback from a few of my clients a week back. Could there be a risk actually of over reliance on AI decision making,
mhm,
leading to human complacency and errors in critical decision making? So, this is my first worry. Is it going to affect our decision making? I am not talking about this year or next year. Yes,
mhm,
I am actually worried about the upcoming years when the new generation is coming into the workplace and they suddenly, instead of developing decision making skills, because decision making is a skill that we develop until we die,
mhm,
isn't it? That's the first worry. And the second one, when I was looking at those time management AI tools, if they become so efficient that they optimize every aspect of our lives. And just yesterday, I found a tool that literally helps to make decisions based on where should I spend my money or how I should spend my time today. Could we risk losing the ability to appreciate and manage our time consciously?
mhm,
Yes. So I will repeat
mhm.
this question again because I think it's very critical for our human nature, for our existence and thriving. Could we risk losing the ability to appreciate and manage our time consciously?
I think that's a fascinating question because I think that The fact that AI is not embodied and doesn't have five senses, I think that our sense of time is very subjective, and there's a emotional intelligence involved in contextual understanding, in common sense reasoning, in creativity and innovation, all kinds of things that AI is not yet very good at. Ethical and moral reasoning we talk about. And how can it help us with those things? That is one question I have. Understanding causality, yet another thing. So when it comes to, there was a lot wrapped up in your question, but when it comes to data analysis, like I think obviously AI is great at finding patterns and very fast, or relatively fast, let me say, if it sees enough data, compared to a human being, and may find patterns that we don't see and that are unconventional, like the AI that learned to win against the chess masters that play these moves that nobody would
Yeah.
make but only because they're conventional. Like conventional, that's a dumb move, and it turns out to be a winning move from an AI perspective. That's fascinating because there's
Yeah,
some
fascinating. Exactly.
yeah, there's I don't know if you'd call that creativity because it's not really producing something brand new, but it's in terms of its ability to disregard it, human convention in a good way and come up with solutions that humans have just ignored or dismissed for a long time. That's great. But when it comes to interpreting data, it was the AI still isn't there. And when it comes to data storytelling, I don't know that AI, again, it can assist. I'm certain it will can assist and it will
It
continue.
can do pretty nice work, like in terms of visualizations of data reporting. There are really great tools for that. But what I'm more worried is specifically about decision making and being
Yeah,
time conscious as a lead in operations. Like we are in the crisis of both. The business processes are really not being taken care of, and also the crisis on leadership. We talk so much, like every second web second
mhm,
event here on LinkedIn is about leadership. We wouldn't be
right,
talking about leadership if it's just would be everything with leaders and the way leaders are being developed and how they approach their work and their struggles. So I think when it comes specifically to decision making and being time conscious, there are other skills that are related that can be affected and simply not being developed for the future leaders. So the first
right,
one, of course, is time management,
mhm,
then prioritization, delegation,
mhm,
continuous improvement, emergency response, time for
mhm,
reflection. I think these are critical things if we are looking at today's leader. So, in operations, time is often the essence. How do you manage your time effectively if you don't have time consciousness? If every time you just rely on AI tool to manage your time, your project's time, project's portfolio's time, and your team's time.
I think one leadership skill or characteristic, it's probably both, that you didn't mention is judgment, and that is something that AI isn't particularly good at yet anyway, and, human judgment. And for example, I do see over-reliance on AI as being a potential risk. However, as if a leader who would entrust AI in its current state, either to make a decision solely or for a subordinate to use a tool and let them make a decision based on what the AI tells them would be poor judgment. And I think that we still need to have that awareness. For example, you and I looked at some tools together, right? So, and they like, I think one of them was intended to create OKRs, right? And so it
Yeah,
spits out
exactly.
a list of what it calls OKRs, but they're actually not, they're objectives and tasks. It was a task list. There were no results there. So if somebody doesn't know what an OKR is and they're charged with coming up with OKRs, and so I'm going to go use this AI tool that's supposed to specialize in this, and it's going to generate a generic list that's not only generic but wrong. If it's hard for me to imagine a situation where that would rise to the level of crisis. If you allowed that to happen, it could become a crisis. But
It has happened in front of me.
You're
I
seeing
have
this already? You're seeing
Yes,
this
I'm
already?
seeing
Yeah.
this already. So the tool
Well,
that I showed, I don't want to
yeah,
mention the name of the tool. I don't
yeah,
want to go against, but basically the tool, it's markets itself as AI project management tool, and you simply add a note, for example, generate objectives and key results for, and then you add your note. And what we noticed, Mark, when we are doing this experiment is that it's generating tasks instead of objectives and key results for company. So another thing that I saw that let's say when I start conversations and I have discovery calls with my potential clients is they come to me and they say, "Oh, I used ChatGPT to generate this sales process for me," and I'm looking at it. I'm like, "This is not a sales process. These are separate activities and tasks." And we get into this argument, and then quick power they even start shouting at him, "ChatGPT knows better than you." Yeah, I'm seeing like crazy things happening. So when you see that
Yeah.
crisis cannot happen, I don't know if that's what you call crisis,
Well,
but can lead like one thing
yeah.
leads to another.
It's on the road to crisis. No, I see what you're saying. To
Yeah.
me, that's a lack of critical thinking skills. And so I think maybe that's one of the risks that you're suggesting. Like if and we anybody who's used AI, any of these tools like ChatGPT, I'm talking about the end user consumer level tools. We find a lot of tools that have employed AI in for vertical applications, and those can be really good. They're usually more behind the scenes, but the things that we interact with directly, like ChatGPT, that man, I forgot what I was just going to say.
It's
Something about what was the last point that you made? Just
it's
grab some
okay.
time.
It's okay. What we're talking about is simply that it's really critical for leaders to keep developing their decision making
Yeah,
skills, and also
critical
being time
thinking.
conscious.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, right,
critical thinking.
right.
And the same applies to delegation because delegating tasks, we still don't have AI level tools for delegating tasks because you
Yeah,
need really structured data in terms of roles and responsibilities
yeah,
and skills. It's thanks God, it's still delegating tasks in terms of the project management software, which is automated. It's still manual. So that's why at the same time, I want to see that automation,
yeah.
but I'm worried about the decision making skills and what are leaders going to do when they simply lose that grip, like the skills, what roles people had, and that collaboration, that human touch.
Right.
Another thing is the continuous improvement. So being time conscious allows, like, it involves finding ways to improve processes to save time in the long run,
Yeah.
isn't it? So
Right.
every leader has specific vision about the business timing. Our relationship with time is just so psychological, emotional, and it just changes daily. Like yesterday, what you perceived as that specific date might be today be, oh, it's going to be just in few months. So let's not plan for that because we have plenty of time, isn't it?
Right.
So
Right.
there's so many cognitive biases that we have. This is a very exciting topic, I think, because in terms of the
Yeah.
continuous improvement, the way AI sees that and a human being, I think that can be a big conflict. What do you think?
Yeah, for sure. Especially when you get into moral and ethical stuff, there's already been a lot of consternation and hubbub, especially in the early days. What does this mean? A lot of the conversations surrounded the ethics of AI and so forth. And that's still an ongoing conversation. It's an important one. I remember what I was going to say, but, and it was simply, we don't know how to verify or validate or even know what the source of the data and the answers that AI is generating. We don't know what the sources are. We don't know where it comes from. So this is where critical thinking is so important. Can you actually eyeball the data and have a sense of whether it's plausible, like a plausibility check first? And then secondly, if you're going to take it as gospel or fact, or if you're inclined to do, I would suggest that's a mistake. And when it comes to making decisions based on what AI is telling you, I think we still need to take it with a huge grain of salt and be able to do your own research and know how like knowledge, like real knowledge is formed. And there's no substitute for some of those practical disciplines. The other thing that you mentioned was structured data. And like I was actually excited because you showed me a tool that it seemed to do extraction. I don't know if it does any transformation, but and loading. So it would the idea that you could take use AI, for example, to turn unstructured data into structured data. Now, like that would be a useful application, if it can do that.
Yeah, it can definitely do that. So I am working now with it's called Bid Scout, and it's like an add-on for Monday.com project management software. And I'm really excited about it because it just takes project management to a completely different level. It can analyze the text, add the sentiment, and yeah, it's definitely helping my clients who are managing like 60, 80 projects at a time to take it to the level. So I'm continuously improving on its usage, but it's definitely exciting.
Yes.
So the next thing that I wanted to talk was about the skill, which is again, we are talking specifically about leaders' decision making and time consciousness. But this skill that is related to it very much is emergency response. And I think if we lack that decision making, if let's say if we rely on AI to always make those decisions, we'll lose that mind resilience, isn't it? Like
Right.
psychological strength of human being. What if emergency happens? Yes. How do we balance those responsibilities of addressing urgent matters effectively? Do we just shut down because AI shuts down? How does it happen? Because if we are not training that muscle of
Mhm.
emergency response as a company leader, what can happen to the company?
Yeah, a lot of this so I'm almost I'm wondering, are you thinking like in a game theory situation, crisis situation where AI decides to like push the button or something, launch the nuclear missiles or something
No, I'm talking specific. I'm talking about very
mundane?
human level, yeah, very mundane situations. Let's say half of your team gets sick, or half of your team gets taken by your competitor,
Yeah,
and they all leave the
yeah,
same day. Let's say you have to. There are like 3 weeks left to complete a big project, and you lost 15 team members that are critical to that project.
yeah.
What do you
I
do?
would
Do
say
you
you're
ask AI where's the nearest bridge or what?
probably yeah. I'd say you're pretty screwed at that point because you didn't recognize the problem soon enough, and probably a cultural problem, probably a leadership problem, all that kind of stuff. But what was your you had a specific question in there in terms of resilience. We were talking about resilience and,
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So in terms of the resilience, like how leaders can basically
I
not lose
yeah.
resilience when they are relying on AI so much.
To me, so much of that is structural. Like, it has to do with the how you structure your operations, and yes, I have an operations bias being an operations person, but these are the kinds of things that, you design the structure of your organization for. Everything from your vision, mission, purpose, core values, to your strategic initiatives and the products and features of your services, the customer experience, beyond that, the brand identity and so forth. First of all, that there need to be through lines with your core values, but that's a whole other story. But having cadences, having cycles of alignment, communication. So what do you do on a weekly basis when you meet? Are you purposeful? Are you actually problem solving? Are you checking progress and verifying progress? Are you digging into if somebody doesn't if somebody's off track, are you exploring those issues in real time? In terms of accelerating growth and scaling and progress, decision making, actually making decisions is such a high leverage point. And but a lot of people don't know how to do that, especially in a meeting format, like in a group format. They don't know how to make decisions either collaboratively or collectively. I think planning ahead. So, then one thing that I think we have talked about before, not today, but it just in previous conversations, is there's this concept of working on the business versus working in the business. And that's old news for anybody who reads like the business literature. That I think that was popularized by Michael Gerber's E Myth Revisited. But the point being that if you're not working on the business, you're not going to be able to grow it or scale it. If you're too busy in the day to day, it's going to stay it's gonna stay stagnant, and what got you to where you are today isn't gonna get you where you wanna go tomorrow. So,
Yeah,
you
exactly. Yeah.
you have one thing that I always emphasize, and it seems like such a minor point, but people, even in some of the frameworks, like, people have rocks, what they call rocks, there's a metaphor for anybody who's not familiar with the US. I won't get into the whole metaphor, but it's basically your 90-day objectives. And those are supposed to be ways that people work on the business. So in other words, they're like what those are project work. It's building on something that isn't there. It's creating and implementing something that isn't there yet. That's presumably going to make your job more efficient, make you or your team more productive or your company more productive and really help with scale. But if you don't actually put that kind of work in its own cycle, like its own sprint cycle, its own development cycle, like what I call operations development, like ops dev, where you're actually building internal structures within the company and you're doing it as if you were building anything else like software in a
Yeah.
sprint with maybe yeah, I like Agile Scrum.
But
It
it's not
doesn't
so
have
sexy as RevOps, isn't it? Is it
but, RevOps is a little
for most of
different.
them?
Yeah. Yeah, RevOps
Yeah.
is we talked about this too. RevOps is sales, marketing, and theoretically customer service, all that, or customers or client success, which often gets overlooked because the rev and the marketing and the sales, the rev part of the conversation is what dominates.
No, I definitely love your point about the time required for working on business specifically. And that leads me to point about time for reflection. So that's a
Yeah.
final skill that I feel is just so much affected, would be affected in the future just because of over reliance on AI. So taking time to reflect and strategize is essential for long term
Mhm.
success, isn't it? And
Yeah.
especially for leaders. The leaders that I met, the best leaders that I met and had a chance to meet, and I'm really blessed I met those, they always, and several of them even told me, listen, this is my time for reflection. I need to think about it. These processes are critical. And they always recognized the thing that I really admire about those people, that they really recognize the moments in life, in business, in project, when that's it. Let's stop. There's definitely need time for reflection. And they could even guide other person. Okay, listen, I feel that you need time for reflection, even though that person might not himself or herself recognize that. So I think that we need to really keep growing those skills to ensure that we have the dedicated time for planning, thinking, and just for reflection.
Yeah.
Because leadership is not about being in charge all the time. It's about taking care of those in your charge. I love that quote by Simon Sinek, the book Leaders Eat Last. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
It's such a good differentiator for the leaders that I meet daily, the clients, the executives. I know that I see a great leader when they know that they're taking care of those in their charge. They always have this mindset that they need to take care of them, not
Right.
to specifically be in charge, but take care of those in charge and let them be really in that position. So the time for reflection gives them everything, definitely. Okay, great. So that leads us to the next point. And the next point is about the set page in the report. There are many skills mentioned there. Yes,
Yeah.
but we will look at only salesperson skills in revenue operations and project manager skills in operations. Because I think that these are the most important for the operational side and strategy execution that we are talking today. So the salesperson skill and the revenue operations, the cold calling, retail sales, outside sales processes, and inside sales. These are the skills that are most affected and can be enhanced by generative AI. And we had fun, Mark, experimenting with those tools. So specifically Humantic AI
Uh-huh.
that
Right.
shows personality. I mentioned Feedly AI models. So in my webinar that you can find also on LinkedIn, I show how Feedly AI can act as buying triggers. It's really great tool if you are in B2B sales and if you want to monitor market for very specific triggers. So there's so many available options. I can tell you more. You can just DM me or watch that video. Sales and marketing verticals in general has the most AI tools, and that makes sense because sales and marketing are the ones that will always invest most in any automation tools or
Right.
AI tools.
The
And
promise of
yeah, exactly. So we have really great tools. The ones that are in specifically in acceleration and sales enablement are really great. And the ones I started, I think, implementing most in the last 6 months were tools that allow you to train sales reps while they are talking to a client. They simply lead the conversation and give you those hints if you specifically say not enough or too much or have too many gaps or not asking specific questions. So that allowed one of my clients to scale from 5 to 4 sales reps, like I think in 2 months or something like that. And they were really well trained because
mhm,
what we did, we created a training model on that AI sales acceleration tool, and that was just crazy effective. So the interface is good. Of course, there are around, I think now 12 or 15 tools in the market, very similar. Not all of them are great. Again, if anyone is interested, I can definitely give you advice, but they are being further developed. Now,
okay.
one of the best capabilities of AI is, of course, we already talked about the data, the well structured data. So, 95% of businesses still need to process the unstructured data somehow. And
Mhm.
unstructured data is usually the fault of business itself, the way it intakes the data. It
Right,
can be
right, right.
structured in the
Yep.
intake process. So, the most common things that I see in these projects of automation and AI in sales and the challenges is simply unstructured data. That's,
Mm.
of course, a different topic, but I really want listeners to think about please structure business data sooner rather than later because all automation projects or AI projects will not work so well if you don't have the structured data. And the second one is the project management skills. So Scrum, submittal, software development lifecycle, agile methodologies, agile project management. We already talked about objectives and key result
Mhm.
gaps. So I want to start with again with this very critical statistic. Only 35% of projects today are completed successfully. And I remember your shock mark.
Yeah, it's an abysmal success rate. By the way, let me just interrupt you for a second, Alex. I just wanted to check, do a time check here because I know we're past the hour. I just
Yeah.
wanted to for our listeners, we still have it looks like we have 7 listeners right now. If and when you wanted to take any Q&A oh, we just lost one there. If you wanted to take it if you just wanted to take any Q&A at any point or and when maybe be good to set expectations for everybody as to when they'll
So
get
we are almost done. That's
okay,
our last point of
okay,
the
got it.
discussion, just about the project management. And
Yeah,
of course, we have remaining ones. You can always raise hand, and then I will invite you and you can ask the questions. Yeah.
perfect. And did you make a recording of this?
Yes, I'm making the recording. Hopefully, it will work. And if it works, I will add it to YouTube. I will share with everyone.
Okay.
That's for sure. That's the goal.
Okay. Yeah, so project management and what was the other one? I'm sorry. I
So I remember your shock when I told you that
oh,
35% of projects today are completed successfully. Remember, and you
yeah.
asked me several times, like, how is that possible?
It's such a terrible failure rate if you think about it. It's not you can compare it to certain athletic percentages, like hitting a baseball. This is an American reference. If you hit 3, that's good, so that's 3 out of 10. But really, like, for all that we know about how to run a successful project, to have a 35% success rate is really baffling. But I would guess that, again, it's systemic. The issue is systemic. It's not a failure. It's not like we don't know how to run a successful project. It's probably that we're not working on the right things. I'm sure there are problems with the project management process itself in a case when something fails, but it could be also that you've decided to work on the wrong things or you're taking too long to development to develop it and so on and so on. Like was there something specific though related to AI that you wanted to address in relation to project management?
Yes,
Like how it could
so
help?
I think that one of the critical things that we have to mention again is about that tools that really promise to develop KPIs and objectives and key
Hmm.
results for
Yeah.
companies and also develop full project management tasks. Even
Yeah.
Monday has, I tested it around 20 times. And every time I'm adding the idea, the items I would need to complete for that specific project, is
Mm,
just not the right one. So I think that public needs to be warned not to rely on those because then
mm.
in a year we can see not 35% of projects are completed successfully, but maybe 5% if that happens.
Yeah.
I see
Yeah.
knowledge gaps. That's what I see. Knowledge gaps about KPIs, objectives, and key results. What is a task? What is a
Hmm.
project? What is a process? And what is a workflow? So these
Right.
sort of simple concepts for us, Mark, for
Mhm.
them, they are just, I see only maybe 5%, of executives, they can really differentiate them. So, for example, just now I'm working on this amazing project of Norway, and this businessman created an app for field operations business. And he's now trying to add additional things to that app that would help field operations executives to make decisions on business health, and we are conducting the interviews. I'm helping with questions. And what we are seeing is just, I don't want to call it ignorance because that sounds just rude. I'm a woman from Eastern Europe, so I'm just really straightforward.
I like that.
Yeah. And let's call it knowledge gaps. Let's call it
Mhm.
just knowledge gaps about the KPIs importance in field operations. Too many businesses that are in field operations and they are successful, they are just not being run by people that have enough knowledge, even though it's just so easily accessible. I'm
Yeah.
talking about
Yeah.
Google. I'm not talking about AI. I'm not talking about anything fancy. I'm not talking
Right.
about a university degree. You don't need university degree to
Yeah.
understand how to monitor your business health at the moment. And as you mentioned, the tools that are being developed that promise them all these KPIs and everything, what simply is happening is they are being developed by teams that are not vertical specific. That's what I call it. They're not niche
Right.
specific. I found this tool called Tara AI, which is designed specifically for engineering teams in
Mhm.
terms of project management. Then at least some perspective is done right in terms of the AI project management. But all other generic project management software tools, they just lack that niche, vertical specific insight. So I am really hoping to see in the market more tools that are being developed by niche specialists, like almost like a doctor developing an app for doctors, isn't this? That's
Right.
maybe a stupid example, but that's the best example I have now. And that's a big gap.
I understand what you're saying. It sounds from some of the apps that I've looked at and that you and I have talked about together, that a lot of them, it's just a race to exploit the current excitement about AI, the hype. And here's something that I think AI could do. Here's an actual they've identified like a vague need out there that in theory AI could help with, but they don't actually have deep understanding of some of the root cause problems that people have in that industry. That's how you get like this tool that's supposed to spit out a list of OKRs for you that doesn't even know what an OKR is, right? Like somebody recognized that, hey, that could be a useful tool. It's almost like it seems like a race for funding or something like that. Like in that case,
Yeah.
like maybe like 90% of the tools out there that you and I were speculating about this are of that ilk, like whether they'll last, whether they'll be around tomorrow. It seems doubtful because they're not actually doing anything useful yet, and they don't seem to have the underlying expertise to improve the product. That's speculation.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. So I think we should end this to the like
Yeah,
3 or 4 key takeaways. So my takeaways would be talent management and professional knowledge about business processes can protect you and allow you to grow. So that's the first thing. That's if I had to cut the long hour. The third and the second one is AI is definitely not an excuse for a gap in leadership and time management skills. That's not
right,
something to be expected, like, oh, I can avoid this accountability to be better leader. And
right.
the final one, start first the structuring the data and simple automations that can save you from 50 to 70 grand at least per year on your projects and sales operations. Use automation projects as opportunity to map process. So don't be one of those 2% losers that we talked about, yes, who just don't even map their processes.
Mhm.
Set of KPIs, overview roles and responsibilities. You will get 4-in-1 project benefits for your business. You will see your business as a machine. You will get into that mindset, that unstoppable mindset. Anything you would like to add?
I think you summarized it very well. I think another overall conclusion would simply be that there are AI tools that can be useful. For example, if you're not using a meeting transcription tool, I think why not? It'll take notes for you. It won't be perfect, but at least you'll have a record. That's an obvious one, and I think we could all list several others that seem obvious to start using right away. But in the meantime, if you're really looking for leverage points to increase the efficiency of your business. Unfortunately, most small to medium sized businesses still aren't doing the very basic stuff. So that's the structural design of your business and your business processes, having standard operating procedures, documenting those, things that are actually repeatable, building repeatable processes, and making sure that you reserve time and resources, dedicate time and resources to working on the business, building some of these leverage points, these scaling pieces on a regular basis in a process that interacts with your production processes and your alignment process cycles, like, all your meetings and both one-on-one and as teams and in your planning cycles, because
Exactly.
that's where
Neglecting your business processes, resilience is like a ticking time bomb, isn't it?
yeah.
Business resiliency demands resilient business processes. That's all I want my listeners to get. If you don't want to lose your business, it needs to be resilient. It
And
means that you need resilient business processes.
Yes, and it's the boring stuff that most people don't like to
Yes.
do,
It's
especially,
not
you know
sexy, it's time consuming, it's really draining to work
yeah.
on that.
This is why we have people like Aukse who specializes in this, and this is one of the things I really love about you is that you have a lot of knowledge and mastery of these tools but you're looking at it as a system and how they interact and how it interacts with the processes. It's a very comprehensive, holistic view that you have. I believe is a really unusual skill set and combination. I want to recommend you, like, to our audience too, is if you have questions about which tools should I implement in my organization, no matter what business function we're talking about, if we're talking about marketing, if we're talking about project management, if we're talking about data analytics, I would talk to Auksa because she's a really outstanding resource for that. So that's another conclusion that I want to share with everybody.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark. I really appreciate that.
I'm sincere.
And I definitely mention you all the time to my clients in terms of strategy, the higher level strategy, and for the startup when they really need to establish the the 2 year strategy and better leadership and better structured teams. So I think there's no better advisor because as a system and soul leadership team coach, the way you formulate the advice that you give to your clients and the way you structure your advice when I'm asking is just such, and I think that's why you can provide such an amazing impact for your clients. So Guys,
Yes,
thank
thank you.
you for listening today. And do you have any questions? You can raise hands and I will try to make your speaker. This is the first time I have this audio event on LinkedIn. Do you have any questions? Sean, I think you messaged me.
I see
Uh,
Sean, I see
like,
Angela,
yeah,
people I know.
come on, guys. Don't be strangers.
Are you still there, Sean? So the question I see is I'm seeing the rise of ERP as leading the forward process of documenting business processes in the quest to accomplish best practices. ERP? Do you mean ERP or
Enterprise,
AI?
yeah, I
Yeah.
think he meant enterprise robotic process automation. Yes, that's
Okay.
definitely an advanced field of automations. I am myself no code workflow automation consultant, so I'm not doing the robotic process. But yes, you are right, Sean. So they're definitely looking more into more advanced AI functions. But my worry is that it's going to be again available only to enterprise level companies. I work mainly with small
Right.
and medium enterprises, and several times I tried to work with robotic processes tools, and they take only very big clients. So I hope that it will not happen the same with AI, that AI will be more involving in terms of all sizes companies.
See, I think that's an important point that you just mentioned that perhaps we should have stated up front, or perhaps I should have stated up front. I work primarily with small to medium sized businesses. The kind of scale you get in a large organization, a corporation, there could be opportunities for the use of AI given the right tools that could have tremendous impact. But for most of the clients that I work with, and I think also that you work with. So distinguishing between enterprise and small to medium sized enterprise or SMB in the US, that there's still some way more fundamental things like it's back to the basics. With these companies, like they still haven't even mastered the basics. That's why I think some of the AI tools are still, you'll see some little improvements on the margins, but it's not going to make the biggest impact.
Yeah, exactly. So, anyone else, Margaret? I see you still there. Do you have any question for us about the tools, about the AI?
Doesn't look like it. Are you getting anything?
No, I don't see any hands. Okay, guys. So, I think it's been a really long conversation, but that's just me. My webinars are usually 90 minutes. I hope that you got plenty of value. And again, we just want to encourage to start working on your company's structure. It's not the sexiest advice. It's not some marketing funnel. Yes, the templates. It's a work that you have to do, but it's definitely rewarding and it protects your business and allows to scale. So thank you so much for attending today. And I will see you soon because I will be hosting event on social selling operations with our founder Alex Boyd soon in October. Make sure to register and I will see you on LinkedIn.
Thank
Okay.
you, everybody. And
Okay.
I
Bye
will see
bye.
you there too. Yep. Take care.